The season is over for Duke men's basketball following an Elite Eight loss to the NC State Wolfpack. There had been 256 meetings prior between the two schools. Number 257 was the first ever to take place in the NCAA Tournament, and the Wolfpack come out on top. How did that happen, and what's next for Duke basketball? Let's talk about it here today.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's so exciting to have you here with us on Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop for everything going on in the life of Duke athletics with a big-time focus on Duke men's basketball, talking about the end of the season for the Blue Devils, losing in the Elite Eight to NC State. 257 meetings all time. We just saw the first ever to take place in the NCAA tournament, and it went in the Wolfpack's favor. So we'll talk about that. We'll be with our good pal Kevin Connelly, the site expert for Ballor Durham, and we'll talk about what's next for this Duke team as well, now that this season is over. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review on the Apple Podcast platform. Your support in that regard really helps us out a lot. And then keep watching us each and every day on YouTube. The season may be over, but the content does not stop. I'll be with you each and every day. Really fired up to be talking about Duke basketball. So without further ado, let's bring him on in. It's our good friend Kevin Connelly, who's back with us as he has been each and every week for many years now, and another season has come to a close. Kevin, I hate it. It's over. We're not previewing a Final Four game for Duke, but we have had a little bit of time now to reflect, get some sleep on the game, and not immediate thoughts in the aftermath. How are you processing the end of the season for Duke?
Well, I think it's twofold, JJ, and thanks for having me again. Obviously, if you look all the way back to June, July, August, September, and what the conversation was about this team, is that almost they were a lock for a Final Four. They were a national championship contender. But then when you got into the season, at least from my perspective, those expectations changed, because I think everyone thought, all right, the only thing Duke didn't do in the offseason was get a big-time rim protector to fill the shoes of what Derek Lively did a year ago. And I think a lot of people said, well, they'll be able to piece it together at the 5 position and everyone else will take that next step and be good. But when they started playing games, I don't think we really saw that. I don't think there was really any progression from Mark Mitchell. I think there was actually regression from Mark Mitchell. Tyrese Proctor, I didn't see any great improvement from him. Kyle Filipowski, who was so awesome as a freshman, he was really good this year as well, an All-American, but he was playing out of position. He's not a 5. He's a stretch 4. Jeremy Roach was great. Jared McCain, once he got his legs under him and accustomed to the college game, he was awesome. This team really didn't have a bench. Yes, Caleb Foster getting injured in the last, 3, 4 weeks, 5 weeks of the season, not being able to play since that Wake Forest game, that certainly hurt this team because that was really your only bench production scoring. Ryan Young's not a starter. Shawn Stewart's not a scorer, and he hasn't really played since the last couple weeks of the season. Jalen Blakes isn't a scorer. Jaden Schutt red shirts after the first game of the season. TJ Power really never develops into the 5-star many people thought were going to have major expectations coming into the season. So I do think it's twofold. I think the way this team has played throughout the course of the season, it's a positive that they got to the Elite Eight. But if you look at the expectations from what they had in the offseason in the summer, it's probably, I don't want to say a failed season, but certainly they didn't meet those expectations.
Absolutely fair perspective and thoughts and insight. And that's why I keep inviting you back, Kevin. And I know that's why people love hearing you when you come on each and every week. We see the comments down below on YouTube, and Kevin Connelly is certainly a Locked On Blue Devils favorite. So, again, let's talk more about the end to the season and kind of what this all means for the Duke basketball program. Jon Scheyer, for the second consecutive season, finishes with identical records. Find that to be a little interesting at 27-9. But look, it's hard to win in college basketball. I said this on yesterday's show, and I'll continue to say this time and time again. Mike Krzyzewski is the greatest to ever do it. 42 seasons, he was the head coach. 37 times we ended the year with kind of a less than satisfying feeling. And it wasn't until his 11th season that Duke was able to even get over that Final Four hurdle. 12% of the time that Coach K, the best to ever do it, was a head coach, they won a national championship. The overwhelming majority of the time, that just not was the case. This season, this weekend, we will see a team like Alabama, who has been playing basketball for a really long time, playing their first Final Four ever. Purdue, NC State haven't been there in 40-plus years. It's crazy how difficult it is to win in March. And here we are, this Duke basketball team with the second-year head coach. They've already kind of made it to the Elite Eight. They've already established themselves as one of the premier programs in the sport, even still when you look at recruiting and that sort of thing. How now the twist of that is, like, to your point, it did feel like there were certain players who regressed throughout the course of the season, who might have taken a step back. How do you blend all of that together and turn it into the tournament success that people are looking for?
Well, I think it's really interesting, and obviously forecasting for next season, at least right now on paper, it's going to be a very young roster once again, with a loaded recruiting class. And obviously there's going to be probably even more hype around this Duke team when we get into the summer, because they're going to have Cooper Flagg, who's the number one prospect coming into the college game, who's going to likely be the number one overall draft pick in 2025. So there's probably going to be more hype around this team just because of his sole presence. Like you mentioned, I do think winning in the NCAA tournament is probably the second hardest tournament playoff style to win, probably outside of the NFL playoffs, because that's also a one and done. When you look at Major League Baseball or the National Hockey League or NBA, I mean, these are all series. Typically, the best team wins in those playoffs because you're playing 5 to 7 game series.
Yeah.
In the NFL playoffs and in March Madness, it's a do or die, winner take all, one game scenario. So it is very, very difficult to win. Not projecting too far into this off season, and I don't know how much we'll get into it today. I think two of the biggest things right now for Jon Scheyer trying to retain is Caleb Foster and Jared McCain. Now, it's definitely going to be tough with Jared McCain, because when you look at everything, right now he's projected as a first-round pick. This, what the draft experts are calling, is a very weak draft compared to next year in 2025, which a lot of people are saying could be one of the better drafts that we've seen in recent memory. So if you're looking for that money and that guaranteed contract of being a first-round pick in the NBA, even though you might not be on an NBA roster next year, this is the time to go into the draft and try and secure that money. But when you look at Jared McCain, not just in college basketball, but in college athletics as a whole, he's one of the highest earning players in terms of NIL. And obviously there are some holes in his game that when you look really at anybody on this Duke basketball team, do you really look at anybody and say, boy, that guy's going to make an impact at the NBA level next year? I don't think so. That's just my opinion. Now, certainly guys are going to go. Kyle Filipowski is going to be a lottery pick. He's going to go, and he'll probably have some success at the NBA because he's going to play more as a stretch four, maybe even as a 3 compared to a 5 is what he played most of this season. But I do think trying to retain Foster and McCain should be at the top of the checklist right now for Jon Scheyer. I think you might even want to lump Tyrese Proctor into that to try and get him to come back, because I remember talking right around this time last year when Tyrese Proctor announced he was returning, and everyone said this is a projected lottery pick in the 2024 draft. And obviously it hasn't panned out this year. He's been way too inconsistent, relies on his jump shot too much, has become a really good defender like we saw in the second half of that Houston game when he was really locking down on the perimeter and Duke was able to get a victory there. But yeah, I don't see him being an NBA draft pick this year. And then it opens a door of what are these players going to do? Will they come back? Will they transfer? Will they try and go to the NBA? There's a lot of questions that this Duke team has to answer over the next couple of weeks.
And we'll start to answer them with you throughout the course of the next few days and weeks here on Locked On Blue Devils. We've got to answer those questions, though, because the season is over. Duke loses to NC State by 12 points in the Elite Eight. How did that happen? How did it happen? We're going to answer that question after we take our first time out here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn. These days, we know how hard it can be to hire for your small business, as you want to make sure that you can find quality professionals for the role that you're hiring for. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board, a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have access to that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have time or resources to hire, as LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier, even launching a new feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Again, 2.5 million small businesses. That's a lot. Be a part of it. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we move forward here on this episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson, joined today by my very good friend Kevin Connelly, who's the site expert for Ballor Durham. We're talking about the end of the year for this Duke basketball team as they fall by 12 points against NC State in the NCAA Tournament. How did Duke lose this game, Kevin?
I think they lost it in the first half, to be honest with you. I mean, we'll get into the defense in the second half as well, but in that first half, they hold NC State to just 26% shooting. They were 9 of 34 in that first half, and Duke only led by 6. They got their lead up to as many as 9. Jared McCain did a really good job at getting to the free throw line, but shots weren't falling. And you wonder if the Houston game took the legs out from under them, and you got a little bit tired going into this NC State game, and you weren't really able to fully recover because they just looked slow. Nobody really had anything underneath them. Jared McCain obviously performed the best with 32 points when I guess when the game was over and you looked up and you're like, wow, how did he have 32 points? A couple of late threes, and obviously scoring 11 points at the free throw line. We'll do that. But I think they lost it in the first half. I think they should have been up a lot more than they were in that first half. And going into halftime, you felt good up 6 because Duke was getting to the free throw line, even though their shots weren't falling. But you just had that feeling with the way NC State has played over the last 3.5 weeks. It was just like they're going to hang around. And similar to what they did in a couple other games here in the NCAA tournament, they catch fire in the second half. And that leads us into what Duke did defensively. This team was probably one of the best defensively in the entire NCAA tournament up until the second half against NC State. Pack shooting 73% in the second half. They were 19 of 26. DJ Burns, 21 of his 29 in the second half. So I think the way the offense performed, obviously overall, but specifically in that first half, because Duke's defense was good in that first half. And then once NC State got shots dropping, and to be honest, they were easy shots in that second half that the Wolfpack had. There weren't many difficult shots. Like they weren't just throwing in shots from 3. They were getting shots inside the paint, right at the rim. And then Duke just didn't have anybody that could respond offensively. I thought they were tentative. Thought a couple of times they got into the paint and Jeremy Roach looking to pass instead of trying to go right into DJ Burns or another post player down low for NC State and try and draw a foul. Thought the refs were inconsistent, but that's not the reason why Duke lost this game. But it is disappointing because it felt like this game was very similar to the other 2 games against NC State. A slow start, which we saw both in the game in Raleigh and the ACC tournament game. And then obviously in Raleigh, the offense got going in the second half. It never did in the ACC tournament, and it never did in the NCAA tournament either.
Kevin, I don't know what else there is to say. I mean, that is a picture perfect kind of breakdown and description. Well done in kind of terms of what went wrong for Duke, because I did point it out yesterday. It does feel like that first half was crucial for this Duke basketball team. You got to play the first half to get to the second. And so Duke had built a 6-point lead, but in so many ways, to your point, it wasn't enough with what NC State was able to come out and do in the second half. NC State shooting 73% in the second half is mind-boggling. Crazy how something like that happens, considering how great Duke's defense had been. NC State scored 55 points in the second half alone. Duke had been averaging 51 that they were giving up in their first 3 tournament games. So a clear shift in what NC State was able to do in the second half. But even in the first half of play, the Wolfpack were 0 for 6 on layups in that first half. One of the misses was Shawn Stewart pinning Ben Middlebrooks' shot against the backboard, right? An athletic play that was awesome to watch. But even numbers like that kind of go to show that NC State really was kind of missing some looks in the first half too. And so to your point, maybe the war against Houston really did take it out of what Duke was trying to do on the defensive end against NC State.
Yeah, and there's a couple other things that I question as well. Talk about the defense, just to cap that off. 55 in the second half for NC State. The most teams scored in the NCAA tournament against Duke was 55 in an entire game, and that was James Madison in the round of 32. So, like you said, that just really speaks to what Duke's defense was in the second half. But go back to that win for Duke in Raleigh against NC State. And yes, the guards played well in that game, and Jared McCain, Tyrese Proctor, and Jeremy Roach. But I think I was on with you shortly after that game, and I think the biggest thing we talked about was Shawn Stewart played more minutes in that game than Kyle Filipowski and Mark Mitchell. And we didn't really see that from him in the last 2 games against NC State in the ACC tournament and the NCAA tournament. I think Duke tried to go back to its game plan that they had in Raleigh against DJ Burns, where they were going to let him get his. Remember, I think he had 27 in that game in Raleigh, but nobody else on the Wolfpack did anything else. And that wasn't the case in the ACC tournament. They would double Burns. They weren't going to let Burns go off, and everybody else around him had a strong game. Here, Burns got his. He's a really good player. He's become America's sweetheart in this NCAA tournament for how he's played. But DJ Horn was able to get his with 20 points. Nobody else was in double figures. So not being able to corral Horn was probably the biggest negative for this Duke defense, because they were going to leave Burns on an island. They were going to let him go one-on-one with Kyle Filipowski or Mark Mitchell or Shawn Stewart, Ryan Young, whoever was playing center at that moment. But they just couldn't control DJ Horn and keep him to single digits. If they were, the outcome might have been different.
Yeah, and then they just couldn't match it on the offensive end.
Yeah.
So here we are talking about the defense. Let's go talk about the offense now as well in a game like this, because as John Shire said going into the locker room at the end of the first half, he felt like it was disjointed was the word that he used. And Duke's game plan against DJ Burns is going to be up for debate. Obviously, in the game in Raleigh, they kind of let him get his as well, but Duke's guards were playing really well to live up to that. But when you're a combined 13 for 42, when we're talking about McCain, Roach, and Proctor, that's just not going to get the job done for Duke on the offensive end of the floor. An inefficient day even for Kyle Filipowski, 3 of 12 from the floor. Tip of the cap to him for going 5 for 5 from the free throw line after he's had some struggles there with the freebies. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about the offense now, Kevin, because, okay, great. Duke is giving up points, but also it's a Duke team that averaged 79 a game this season, and they just didn't get there in this game. And if it wasn't for a barrage of Jared McCain three-pointers late in the game and some ticky-tack fouls sending Jeremy Roach to the free throw line, that final number would have been worse.
Yeah, and listen, I get John Shire wants to go down with the guys who got him there. I couldn't believe he left Tyrese Proctor out there for as long as he did, playing 30 minutes. I mean, he didn't have it. That was his worst game that he's played in 2 years. I mean, he was 0 for 9 from the field, 0 for 5 from three-point range. He just did not have it. Now, do you want to throw a Jalen Blakes out there who, really isn't going to give you anything offensively? I don't know. Could you try to go deep in your bag and try and get 7 minutes from TJ Power and let Roach play the 1, McCain play the 2, and see if Power, who didn't play against Houston and would have fresh legs, could come on the court and hit a couple of 3-pointers? I don't know. Should Shawn Stewart have played more and you could slide Mark Mitchell up to the 3? I don't know. And I get why John Shire left Tyrese Proctor out there, because he wants to go down with the guys who got him there. But it was very apparent, especially early in that second half, that he did not have it. He wasn't going to find it. He was searching for everything. He was not attacking and getting downhill to the rim. And I don't want to just single out his play, because really nobody played well offensively, but Proctor was a killer for Duke in this game.
What we do know is that the season is over for Duke men's basketball. It ends after an Elite Eight run for the Blue Devils, 27-9, the overall record for Duke. Let's take one more timeout on the show. We'll wrap it up with Kevin Connelly when we come back here on this episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home the huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Into the line here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson, joined by my friend Kevin Connelly, who is the site expert for Ballor Durham. We begin to shift a little bit to off-season mode. Still plenty of content coming for Kevin Connelly over at Ballor Durham. Tell us a little bit about it, Kevin.
Well, we'll have all the fallout from this NCAA tournament loss, and obviously the season ending over at balldurham.com. Follow us on Twitter at ball_Durham. Let's put a positive spin on this, JJ. The McDonald's All-American game. McDonald's All-American game is tonight. Cooper Flagg and Isaiah Evans takes the floor in Houston, Texas, for the country to see. So two of Duke's top recruits get a peek into the future in the McDonald's All-American game tonight. So we'll have full coverage of that as well. Obviously, we covered some of the practice that they have trying to get ready for this game. So already looking ahead to next year with Cooper and Isaiah on the floor later tonight in Houston.
Yeah, we should be looking forward to the next year because it's a lot of really talented players coming into the Duke basketball team. Of course, we'll be following what players stay, what players go, and again, having final thoughts to recap the season that was for Duke with this 27-9 record. Also, we never know, Kevin. The coaching carousel literally always spins. And so we saw last year, Emil Jefferson all of a sudden has an opportunity with the Boston Celtics. That was kind of a curveball that the coaching staff didn't foresee. We also saw the NCAA add 2 more assistant coaches to the staff, if you so wish. Duke let Will Avery have a job on the staff this year. So we could see another coach potentially added to the bench for Duke this upcoming season. I mean, there are going to be a lot of different things that people got to watch out for. We're always talking about the players, but you know what would be nice? A little bit of consistency, I think, from the coaching staff as well.
Yeah, that's certainly something that was a big storyline last summer. There was a lot of flux with the coaching staff until I guess August, maybe even early September, before everything got officially announced. So that's something else you got to keep your eyes peeled on. And as they say, Duke basketball never stops. They just keeps going, even though we'll still have now 8 months in between games.
I hate it. 8 months too long, but we've got plenty of things to be talking about with the Duke basketball team. You and I love talking about it each and every day, and so we'll certainly continue to do that in the days and weeks to come. And, of course, Kevin, you'll be a part of those conversations. So, again, kind of looking at the season that was for the Duke basketball team, Jeremy Roach, a captain on the Duke team, could have seen his career come to an end. It remains uncertain what will happen with that COVID year of eligibility. Let me get some quick thoughts on Captain Roach and what you saw out of him this season.
Well, I thought for the most part, he was probably one of Duke's most consistent players. I mean, really taking a step up from three-point range. Again, he was the leader on the floor, now a two-time captain, and he's really been through it all with this Duke program. And honestly, my prediction is I think that was his last game that he's played this season. I mean, you come in as a freshman, the COVID season, you don't make the NCAA tournament. He's seen some of the highs of this program, getting to a Final Four. He's seen some of the lows, losing to Carolina in Coach K's final game in Cameron, losing to Carolina in the Final Four, losing to NC State in the Elite Eight. But the shots he made, the games he's had in those runs to the Final Four and Elite Eight really have been something special. You see the stats for your viewers watching on YouTube right there, 14 points per game, finishes as almost a 44% three-point shooter. Yeah, he was something special, and hopefully he's remembered around Durham for a long time to come.
And Kyle Filipowski, as we talked about a little bit ago, is a projected first-round draft pick. Likely would see the end of his college career. I hate that it ended the way that it did in that game against NC State, fouling out and, again, being a little inefficient with 3 of 12 shooting from the floor. But All-American this year, first-team All-ACC, certainly led Duke in so many statistical categories, as we're now displaying on YouTube. If you're watching with us here, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. But Kevin, if you will, a word on Kyle Filipowski.
Yeah, I think Kyle Filipowski honestly got a lot of hate this year and maybe really didn't deserve it. As a freshman, I think everyone was in love with him. Two-time All-American as a freshman and a sophomore. And I think he was asked to do something that he maybe wasn't as comfortable with this year. I mean, last year he was playing his natural position as a power forward. This year that we talked about at the top of the show, Duke didn't get a center to replace Derek Lively, and they were going to roll with the 7-footer Kyle Filipowski at center. And it was something we talked about all off season that was going to be a major question mark. Could he do this? And he did it. He sucked it up for the team, played center, but he's more stretch four. He's a conventional stretch four, and I think that's where he's going to make his living in the NBA. But lead the team in scoring and rebounding again. His three-point percentage did go up this season, so you did see some improvements for him. Would have liked to see him, though, at his natural position. But, yeah, Kyle Filipowski, I think he lived up to the expectations that were placed on him coming into Duke, and probably even exceeded them a couple of years ago.
And then finally, before we get out of here, we're going to have many full season profiles and kind of year-end reviews, as we've always done here on Locked On Blue Devils in the days and weeks to come. But just immediate thoughts after the fact. Ryan Young played his final game of college basketball, 6 years as a college basketball student athlete. He was nearly in tears when you watch some of the locker room video of him being interviewed in the press scrum following the games there in Dallas over the weekend. What did you think of the season that Ryan Young had? And just a word or two on his 2 seasons playing for the Brotherhood.
Well, Ryan Young, I thought, was a vital part of this team over the last 2 years. Now, you look at the way Duke constructed their roster. They go to the transfer portal a couple of times during John Shire's first season. They get Ryan Young from Northwestern, Cole Grandison from Illinois, and then they didn't go near the transfer portal this past offseason. So Ryan Young sticks around. He was a captain. You could tell the players really gravitated to him. A lot of players looked up to him. They looked to him for leadership. They looked to him to lead the way, even though he wasn't always on the floor. You see there averaging just 12 minutes per game. But when he came in crucial moments, you knew he was going to deliver. Thought he was outstanding against Houston in the Sweet 16. You go back to the regular season game in Madison Square Garden against Baylor, what he did when Kyle Filipowski was in foul trouble over the final 8 minutes of that game, him and Jared McCain really leading Duke to a win in that one. And obviously reality sets in for him that he doesn't really have a future playing professionally, whether that be in the NBA or overseas. And it comes to the harsh reality that his basketball career probably came to an end on Sunday night against NC State, and he was looking to get to the Final Four and try to make a run at a national championship. So obviously a tip of the cap to him. Obviously he's going to get a master's degree from the Duke Business School, which is one of the best in the world. So obviously you could tell that Ryan Young, and you could tell you really got an inside look at Ryan Young this summer with the Brotherhood podcast, and really opened the door of seeing him more as not just a basketball player, but a human being as well. And you got to see his teammates and coaches talk with him and connect with him outside of a basketball court. So I think it was really cool. I think he'll be remembered around Duke just for being really that really great guy around the program, and certainly wish him all the best in whatever he does over the next couple of months after graduation. But I think Ryan Young was a vital part of this team, even though he wasn't a guy that played 25 to 30 minutes every game.
Couldn't have said it better myself, for sure, because I absolutely love Ryan Young's personality and being able to kind of loosen up a little bit the younger guys on this Duke basketball team and be so connected, playing together with one another, I think is brilliant, and certainly a player that's going to be missed. And to your point, when you got a Duke business degree on top of a Northwestern undergrad, I think Ryan Young's pretty set up. He was interviewed after that game against Houston and was talking about he had like 25 LinkedIn connections. And then some of the reporters went over to Jared McCain, who doesn't even have LinkedIn or isn't familiar with kind of setting up for life after basketball. So certainly enjoyed that sound as well. But Ryan Young's going to be taken care of. He knows a lot of people in a lot of spots. And so really excited for what he was able to do over the course of 2 years. All right, Kevin, thank you so much for your thoughts and perspective over the course of yet another basketball season, joining me each and every week here on Locked On Blue Devils. Do me a favor, remind people one more time where they can find all your work.
They can find everything over at balldurham.com. And then on Twitter, you can follow us at ball_Durham.
Kevin, thanks as always, seriously. And looking forward to doing this again soon, okay?
Can't wait, JJ.
Off-season mode coming up. Kevin will be back with me soon, and we'll be talking all about that and a whole lot more as we wind down another episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Once again, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcast. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.